All right, on to the last section of the page, the footer. If we go to uh, the browser where we have it running, we see we already have this about the library section. Nothing appears for the footer. If we go to our code to index.html and down to the bottom of the page, we see we have a footer, but it's empty. So this is where we are going to be putting our stuff. All right. And if we open the style sheet, we'll be working with the HTML and the CSS this time. Makes it more complicated, but that's usually the way things will be. So we already have a number of, I think all of the declarations already written for us. So one thing to keep in mind is that you have to have the classes you use here need to be exactly as they are here, or else it just won't work, because that's how CSS is applied. So let's look and see what we have here. We have let's look at the elements. So number one is footer columns. You know what? I'm gonna copy this over to Excalidraw so I can maybe mark it up a little bit. That is old. Okay, so here, number one, footer columns. That is this element. I want hard edges. That's this element here. Um, the the one that wraps around this whole row of stuff. The reason we're calling it footer columns is because it has one way to look at what it contains is that it contains 3 columns of stuff. We've got this column that just has one thing in it. Oops. And we have this column of stuff, and we have this column of stuff. And so therefore, we call this element footer columns. So then each of the individual columns would be given the class footer column. And yeah, that might be a little confusing at first, but you get used to it. It's very, very common to name the container that contains a group of something with the plural noun, and then the individual things you give it the singular noun. That's a very common practice, not just in HTML. So that's footer columns and footer column. What can we note about the footer columns element? This one, footer columns. What can we note about it? There is one important thing, probably the first thing that you should notice is that the elements inside it are in a row. There are 3 elements inside it. Yes, there's just 3 elements. There's 1, 2, 3. The groups of elements count as single elements. They're in a row. So we need to make it a flex container. That's how you make things into a row, basically. Well, that's most of it. I'll leave the internal details of these for until a little bit later. We do need to note that we have this copyright element also, which is outside of the footer columns element. That's important. If we put it inside footer columns and then make footer columns a flex container, we'll wind up with it over here on the far right of our page, which is not what we want. All right, so let's do this. Let's start by writing the markup. So we know we need this footer columns element. It's just a container. There's no semantics involved here. Well, you know what? You could certainly make it. You could make it a UL, but these are they're different sorts of things. They're not. It's not really three different columns of the same sorts of things. So I'll just use a generic div. Inside this div, what do we need? Well, remember we need three columns. Inside these columns, what do we need? Well, we need a logo, an image, and then we have these groups with a title and two items underneath the title. Here would be a good case to use a list and then list items. This, the hours and the social media, these would probably be, you should probably make them H3s, headings. So give that a try. Try to write the markup for the three columns inside the footer columns element, and then unpause the video. All right, so you could, as usual, follow this the step-by-step instructions. Let's see. So we need three footer column elements. In the first one, we need an image. It's a logo, so we need an image. SRC. I'm gonna guess it's gonna be one of these. I'm gonna guess it's logo whites because it's on a dark background. And then triple peaks logo for the SRC value. Speaking of dark background, I'm gonna set that right now because otherwise we're not gonna be able to see anything. Background color. I'm gonna just make it black for now. We can change that to whatever it's supposed to be because I don't remember. First column seems good. Second column. You see these modifiers here? We mentioned that in here. Assign this modifier to the second column. Assign this modifier to the third column. You'll see why. So the modifiers are content hours and content social. Now inside each of these, what should we have? Well, I already mentioned that we would want an H3. And if we look in here, we can see this footer column heading class. So that's probably what we're supposed to use for the heading. Then, so this one says hours. We've got a footer list class. Sounds like that's what we would want to use for the list. A UL. Footer list item. Well, that seems pretty obvious also, right? That's what we would put on the list item. List items with an S. There's that. Inside the list item, the list items, what are we going to need? Well, it differs. In here, this is just text. We can just use text. So we don't need anything inside the LI. We can just put text in there. These need to be links because that's what they would be here for. They would be a link to the Facebook account or the Instagram account. So for hours, we can just leave the text the way it is. So you know what? I'm just gonna time 1, time 2. You can fill out the correct values then. Now, what about for the other column? I'm just going to copy this because the structure is going to be pretty much the same. Social media. Now, inside each of these are links, right? So what what do we use for links? Anchor tags. It's the A tag. And we've got a footer column dash link class that's already prepared for us that looks like it is intended for this purpose. All right. I don't worry about the fancy editor tricks. You can just do each of them individually. So here we have our LIs, and each of them contain anchor tags. Before I worry too much, before we go any further, I'm just going to put in the text here so we have something in place. Instagram. And let's take a look at where we're at in the browser. Well, all right. So we've got some text items here, and you see how they're all not visible? Well, that's because they're not white. The white color was already applied to the column links. We could, in this case, I think we can just apply color white to the footer, the parent container, and then now all the text is showing because I didn't put the copyright in yet. We also have these links that are these images that are supposed to be there, and they're supposed to come before the text. When you when you see something that comes to the left, that basically corresponds to above something. Well, actually, here we want to put it inside the anchor tag so that the link is copyable. It's not strictly necessary, but it makes it a little nicer. I think we have a social icon class, right? Footer double underscore social dash icon. Let's find the images. Facebook. Yep. Facebook. And then I'll copy this and change this to Instagram. Always need to add alt text. Now you might be wondering about what to do with the links. You can just put a hash in there, which is what's commonly done when you have hrefs that you don't want to put anything in there, like if you're just building a demonstration site or something like that, which is basically what this is. We don't have there isn't an actual Facebook page for the Triple Peaks library, so the hash will do fine. Okay, that's looking pretty good. That's the HTML roughly. Now, one thing to note, do you see this line here? Even once we change the color, let me show you. The color, I'm assuming it's going to be the same exact color as what we have here. So let me, as what we have for the one up top. 1F, 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 like an off black. See, now they're the same color, but we still have that line. However, it's not there when you close the developer tools. To be honest, I'm not really sure why that is, but it's something I've noticed, and it confuses students sometimes, so you can ignore it. Now our next task is well, we might as well put that last element in, right? Div dot, no, not div, a paragraph, footer double underscore copyright. Do you see that I'm doing something wrong? It wasn't intentional. Name, copy, is that how you do that? I think so. 2025. So this is a common issue. I actually wasn't intending to make this mistake, but might as well. And then you can see the issue is that I neglected to put this footer copyright element in the footer. And so it appears below the footer without the, and there isn't the correct background color. So there we are. All right. So that is the HTML. Now we have some CSS to do. And I might not show you everything, but what I want at least to do is show you how to get the outline, the basic configuration in place where you have the 3 columns going across and so on. But how about you give it a try on your own? Try to finish everything. Go through the rest of the instructions and try to get it looking correct. And then when you're done, you can unpause the video and we will go through it. Okay, so I already hinted at the first thing that we need to do. Turn footer columns into a flex container. If the copyright is in a row with these other elements, well, then you probably have it in the wrong place. You need to move it out. It can't be inside footer columns. Now everything's clustered here. And so some of you might have spent some time trying to do various values of justify content, but it's not really going to work in this case. Instead, what we want to do is we want to use a trick that actually you kind of used here. We've used it before. It's automatic margins. Remember that an automatic margin on the left, for instance, pushes an element as far as it can go to the right. So for instance, if we put, oh, I see an issue. Let me fix that before we move on. Footer column content social. So margin left auto will push an element as far as possible to the right. So if we give margin left auto to, oh, we need the display flex, which then it pushes that all the way to the right.